Okay, good morning. My name is David Warwick. I am chairman of the advisory board for Algo. I am joined this morning by two of our advisory board members, Chris Nagelson and Mithat Eidendag. So Chris, just give us a quick introduction of who you are.
Sure. Hi. Thanks, David. So my name is Chris Nagelson, and I've been in retail for 30 years. Recently left Walmart after 17 years running a big part of their business. And then prior to that, I worked at American Eagle Outfitters for about 9 years. And then prior to that, I was with Macy's right out of school, and then a short stint at Abercrombie & Fitch. So all in all, about 30 years for me. Recently semi-retired about 5 months ago, and lucky to be working with you guys since then.
Thanks, Chris, and welcome this morning, but also it's great to pull you out of retirement a little bit. Mithat, good morning. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning. Thanks, Dave. My name is Mithat Eidendag. I work for a service provider, Avato, for the last 20 plus years. That's also the history I have actually in the supply chain, in the global supply chain. So I worked in Europe, in Asia, and now here in the US. Providing fulfillment services in the US, mainly for tech clients, actually.
Well, welcome, and thanks for taking the time out this morning. So what we're thinking today is to talk a little bit about the year ahead. There's a lot happening in the press. There's a lot of discussion around the economy. And so I wanted to start off by really just asking each of you in turn, these are uncertain times. What is the thing that you're most concerned about from a supply chain perspective as we start into this new year, 2023? So Chris, I'll get your thoughts first.
Sure. It's the supply chain has been put through so much in the last few years, and it's probably no different now. It seems that, it's still recovering really from pandemic times. And so you have this point of time where it's like really unnatural swings in consumption that were happening in the market, and the overall market trying to recover and catch up to that. And then you have supply chain problems where you just can't even get product through the channel. So it's all coming, and then it eventually shows up. And then you have economic problems on top of that. So you're not really sure. It doesn't sound like there's a real consensus on what's going to happen this year from an economic perspective. So there's probably a lot of uncertainty as far as what is going to be that new demand pattern that we're going to need. And I think that you're just going to have to really spend this year being nimble as possible, figuring how you're going to react to it, because I think there's just so much uncertainty right now within the market, and your supply chain is going to be the blunt of that.
No, I completely agree. I think that, it's almost as if the pendulum swung too far as regards demand and supply, and now it has to come back to some sort of equilibrium, but all of the pressure lands on supply chain. And so the ability to be nimble and agile through this year, to your point, is going to be super important. Yeah. Mithat, what do you think?
Yeah, so what we see in the market, and also talking to our clients actually, which are mainly from the tech vertical, everybody built, and based on what Chris said, everybody built quite huge inventory levels actually. So, and it started last year that the demand might not have been there. So we see a lot of inventory in sitting around actually. I think that will be the focus, or it looks like it's a focus, to get the inventory levels down, to somehow be able to predict what the demand is and manage somehow the intake actually from the manufacturing side. The second area, what's definitely what we see this year, and I'm talking about also clients we are talking to, is on the one hand, the cost pressure. A lot of our clients at least put on their agenda on top two, top three items. On the other hand, you have the inflation, which drives obviously the cost up, whether it's material, labor costs, etc., energy prices. So it's a little bit of a conflict, obviously. That is what we see at the moment in the market.
No, that absolutely makes sense, and I do concur. I hear the same rumblings, and it kind of leads me into my next question, which is, from my perspective, I think that technology continues to play a key role in the evolution of supply chain. And as you think about the challenges that we see, and you've both mentioned demand and supply, what is it that you look for in technology? And is it more of an iterative approach? So as opposed to let's go full ERP implementation, let's engineer everything from the ground up. Do you see opportunities whereby technology is not only catching up with physical supply chain, but surpassing it? And what role will that play in the next year? So Chris, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think with all that uncertainty, you have to have help, right? So I think that the preservation of the bottom line, driving your profit in the company right now, obviously you see a lot of retailers are reacting right now. So you see layoffs, you see restructuring, you see lots of different things happening. You have this pressure to run your business more efficiently than you have in the past. And in a lot of cases, sometimes with less resources. So if that's going to happen, then you have to really rely on technology to kind of fill that void and to help you do things better, more efficiently, and in some cases with less, if that makes sense.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that the theme for 2023 definitely seems to be around efficiency and optimization. And so understanding how technology plays a role in that to augment the current architecture, I think is going to be important. Mithat, what are your thoughts?
So I 100% agree. What I see is that big projects which are already kicked off, they just continue with implementations when it comes to big tech implementation projects actually. But my take is that people who haven't kicked it off might delay bigger implementations actually and utilize what they have in order to optimize and improve their bottom line actually. That what I believe is happening. At least we see that in our world as well as a 3PL actually, that big strategic projects which we already kicked off will continue. But things which we can push out a little bit when it is a bigger project, we do push out, but focus more on smaller technology improvements actually, which can help us short term as well.
So as we think about technology, you can't really read any news wire anywhere at the minute without the mention of ChatGPT, OpenAI. This is, it's almost like Industry 5.0. It's almost like the next evolution. It's been compared to the birth of the internet. It's going to surpass the metaverse. It's really exciting. But from a supply chain practitioner, and you both have been, heavy in the industry for decades, and all of the problems, and you've seen so many of these technologies come and go. What are your thoughts, Mithat, in terms of how to think about artificial intelligence, its use in supply chain? Is it just obvious that it can be used for advanced analytics and control towers, or do you see something else?
So I do believe, beside the obvious items in the warehouse, when I look to the four walls, I believe you can add a lot of value to it, or it can add value when it comes to productivity and efficiency, how you can manage your inventory within the warehouse actually and guide the people. But also from a quality perspective, when you do your cycle counting, for example, how inaccurate this is today, people going and counting, etc. With this type of, if you combine AI with computer vision, for example, you can achieve much better results actually, and have a return on investment even. I do believe that AI will play a very important role, or is playing already, but it's still very early, especially like maybe other companies like Amazon have done more work by investing more in that area or starting earlier. But I believe we are still in the early stages when it comes to four-wall logistics actually and AI. But I do believe it has, it will add massive value to it.
Chris?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you're saying. What I like to see is, from a merchant perspective, you're always trying to figure out how to manipulate and manage your inventory as well as possible, and that collaborative decision-making process between sales and operations from factory all the way to shelf is like the ultimate collaboration for an organization. There's so many stakeholders involved in that. And it's not as dynamic as you would like it to be. So I think what I'd like to see out of AI, I think it's going to play a big role as we move forward. But the more predictive part of it, I think, is really where we need a lot of help. Being able to predict supply constraints, possibly recommending alternative resources, redeploying resources, things like that are going to help us to prepare and be ready for those things that happen in the market. Again, this year is going to be so unknown for everybody with economic, concerns that are happening and so forth, and changes in some supply and demand. Being nimble is really critical, and how fast you can react to those impulses in the market is really going to be. It's always going to dribble down to the bottom line, and it's going to affect your profitability and how you manage that inventory. And I think we need all the help we can get, and hopefully AI is that.
I think so, and I think that AI is, in some cases it's seen as it's thought of as a replacement. I actually think it's more of an enabler in those early years of evolution, and so it's going to be really interesting to see how that comes together. Before I let you both go, one last question. So, Chris, what advice would you give to supply chain practitioners as they start into 2023 with all of this uncertainty? From your fabulous career history, what's the one piece of advice you would give?
Nimble, like absolutely prepare for everything. I think at this point right now, you've got to be able to figure out your business is going to be pressured probably in one way or another, and it's probably unforeseen right now. There doesn't seem to be a consensus on what the economy is going to be like this year. I've read just as many stories that it's going to be okay, and just as many stories that it's going to be horrible. Right. So I don't really know if anybody really knows what it's going to look like this year, and we know what we came from. So being able to be nimble and react quickly is really going to be critical, and figure out how you can manage your inventory. That's just in general. But then when you talk about how you can manage your inventory across channels, whether that's in a physical store environment or an e-commerce, that's going to be difficult also. So if you can have that fluidity of inventory across both of those channels, I think it's going to be critical.
Okay. Mitat, what's your one word of advice?
So I know it will be difficult, but I believe this is crucial also this year. It's crucial to keep, when you have a 3 to 5 year plan and a strategy, try to keep staying on track of it. I know that it might require investment still for this year, but I believe it is very, very important just to continue with, if you have defined your strategy and something is important, that you keep doing that, whether it's technology or other implementation or changes in the supply chain. That is something I learned during the COVID, which was like at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. We didn't stop the important implementation, and it paid out actually. And normally it does pay out, even if you are in a crisis like this year, maybe, as we are a bit uncertain about the times this year, actually.
Thank you both. I mean, I think it's a healthy blend of optimism, be prepared, and we'll see how this pans out. But I really appreciate you both taking the time this morning to share your thoughts, and look forward to catching up soon.